Hello, welcome to a presentation called Magic Angle Directional Imaging, Revolutionizing Musculoskeletal MRI. My name is Karen and I'm a postdoctoral research radiographer at Imperial College London. Many thanks to Sarah for inviting me to speak to you today on work that I began researching over 20 years ago. I find the magic angle artifact an intriguing phenomenon, and hopefully by the end of this talk you will as well. During the talk today, I'm going to explain what I mean by low field and magic angle effect. I will talk about work from my PhD and what magic angle directional imaging is and the post-processing steps that are needed to make magic angle directional images. I will also cover the building of the magic angle scanner along with challenges and results from this new system. So what do we mean by low field? There's not much agreement on this one, so I've had to put it on a logarithmic scale from 0.001 Tesla to 100 Tesla because there's a huge range of fields that people are now using clinically. Most people are going to be familiar with what I've called standard field, and that includes your 1.5 to 3T systems, basically your workhorse scanners. Some of you may be dabbling in high fields, which are your 3 to 7T range, and some of you may be in research centres that have the ultra high fields, and those are anything above 7T, up to about 14T now. Low field is anything less than 1 Tesla, and as you can see here, it covers a wider range than all the other fields put together. So I've split this down further into ultra low, low, and mid field. Our magic angle scanner is at the 0.15 Tesla, so that's somewhere in the middle of this low field range. So beginning with the MR systems, these are probably what most of you are going to be familiar with. This kind of design hasn't really changed that much in over 40 years. On the left is the first clinical MR system from 1983. On the right is one launched at last year's ISMRM. They look pretty much identical in design, though obviously much around them, like the computers, the gradients, the coils, have changed a great deal. Low field MRI has always been a bit different. And more recently, there's been a bit of a revolution going on with scanner design. Here are some examples of low field scanners, mostly for extremity and musculoskeletal work, and you can see that they don't really look like conventional MR systems. Low field allows us to totally redesign the shape of the system so that they are much more open, rounded, and patient-friendly. They also allow us to scan patients in different positions. So you can see a standing one here and the upright scanner that allows patients to be scanned seated and in flexion and extension. But low field allows us to change much more than just the shape. Now MR scanners do not even need to be in a hospital. They do not need RF shielding. They can work at lower power. This makes them lighter, cheaper to build and run compared to conventional MR systems. So they are perfect for developing countries and places with limited access to MRI. Two examples here. On the left, a hyperfine swoop in Malawi, and on the right, a Spanish-developed scanner that's scanning a patient in their own home. And if you wanted to, you could even scan outdoors. Many thanks to Teresa from the Spanish group here, who basically gave me these two examples. They managed to scan connected to the mains in a garage, which was slightly undercover, but also completely autonomous using a generator in the open air. The idea of scanning outside in the sunshine is lovely, but in the UK and some areas, I just think that I wouldn't want to risk it with the rain. But low field scanners can get way more exciting. This is my system, and it will actually rotate around a person's limb, be it arm or leg. The magnetic field can actually move, allowing us to have different B0 positions. It's anything we like within a plus or minus 180 degrees of roll, and plus or minus 45 degrees of yaw. Now the yaw is much more difficult to see in this one, but it's just the central inner ring which is coming out, and one part of it's coming out towards you and the other part's going away for you. And that's the limiting factor, is the yaw rotation. And that's because the patient's limb goes between the two parts of the magnet, and I do not want to break anyone's leg or knock anyone out. The red dot indicates the position of the second nuclei, its local magnetic field at a distance of r and an angle of theta from a magnetic dipole moment mu, and that's calculated. The z component of the dipolar field, the b mu z, is maximally positive directly in front of the dipole and maximally negative on either side. In this example, the second nuclei is between the positive and the negative fields, where b mu z passes through a null point equaling 0. This occurs at the angle theta magic angle, where 3 cosine squared theta magic angle minus 1 equals 0. The theta magic angle values are known as the magic angles and occur at approximately 55, 125, 235, and 305 degrees. The proton interactions occur along the same axis as the collagen fiber. When the collagen fiber is orientated parallel to B0, the dipolar interaction is maximal, the blue arrows, leading to very fast T2 relaxation times. The relaxation sink for the entire water proton system is primarily the hydration of the polar sites on the main chain. When the collagen fiber is orientated at the magic angle of 55 degrees, the dipolar interaction from the static field falls to a minimum, which is shown in the orange arrows, lengthening the relaxation time. This is because the T2 decay now is only governed by the time-varying field. We chose to focus on the knee joint with its majority of short T2 tissues. MRI permits direct imaging of soft tissues, but collagen-rich tissues such as the meniscus, tendon, ligaments, plus articular cartilage to a certain extent cannot be measured by conventional MRI, as there is a rapid relaxation of the MR signal so that the tissue often appears dark grey or black. You can see that in the tendon's T2 decay curve here, where the MR signal has decayed before it can actually be made into an image in the data acquisition window. So why would you want to make the magnetic field rotate? So when short T2 tissues are positioned at the magic angle, their T2 is lengthened, and that gives us much more time to collect the signal. So you can see here in this graph, this is what normally happens, and the signal from these short T2 tendons is literally gone. Whereas if you place it at the magic angle, suddenly you've got a lot more time to actually be able to collect the information and record that into an image. Developing magic angle imaging for a whole joint is very complex. The literature describes mainly single excised tissues. The problem is that multiple tissues have different anatomical positions, multiple fiber orientations that must be orientated to have a magic angle effect. When positioning a limb, there is absolutely no way of knowing the alignment of the collagen-rich structures, as they are hidden from view and cannot be palpated. That is why a whole knee joint was scanned at different horizontal angles to B0, and regions of interest were plotted to determine the signal intensity variations for different tissues. Interestingly, some tissues at 0 degrees are aligned at the magic angle. Can you spot them? ACL. Some people have suggested it could be harnessed and used as a contrast mechanism because it will provide angle-dependent contrast and give us more information about collagen-rich tissues. Next, I'm going to explain how I went on this very unusual journey, which started at this sketch, and which was somebody trying to explain to me about a rotating B0 scanner, to scanning goat's legs in a conventional MR scanner overnight, to where we are today with this prototype scanner. So for the MADI technique, I developed this on the conventional MR system using a head coil and a sphere which contained the animal knee. I scanned using 3D volumes in multiple different planes that you can see marked on the surface of the sphere. This was a large ball magnet, and we did try humans, but it was impossible to get the positions we actually needed. So that led us to the idea that we're going to need a full scanner redesign. There isn't enough time to go through in great detail the post-processing. This slide, though, covers the main steps. Initially, the volumes were registered and aligned before standard deviation maps were computed to identify collagen-containing voxels. An interactive display was used to measure the standard deviation range of voxels and segment areas with higher standard deviations. So these ones were basically the ones which had an increase in signal intensity at some point throughout the 9 volumes, and that indicates that they are more likely to contain a magic angle artifact. The net collagen orientation of the voxels were then displayed in fiber orientation vector maps, and that was using an algorithm that had been initially developed for DAFI imaging by Severini and Bidder. And then we basically displayed them as in ParaView using vector glyphs in 3 dimensions to grow the tractography. We also created a measure of how aligned the structure was called the alignment index, and it's basically a ratio of the fraction of orientations that fall within a 20-degree center of a selected direction. This is the alignment index for the dog's ACL, which we abbreviated to AI and now keeps being confused with artificial intelligence. It computes the collagen fiber orientation distribution, which is visualized on a hemisphere to detect changes within the ligament. If you see the dark red, that indicates the most aligned fibers, and the dark blue shows the least aligned fibers. What you could see was that there's discrete bundles which suggest healthy tissue, and then in the anterior medial, which was the bundle that was damaged in the dog, that's actually smeared across the anterior medial side of the hemisphere. As I mentioned earlier, not everyone is very flexible or able to contort themselves into highly uncomfortable positions inside MR scanners. It's not very practical nor well tolerated. As you can see, there's actually a real limited amount of space due to the closed confines of the scanners and also the coils that need to be aligned with the magnetic fields to get optimal image quality. So how do you scan a patient harnessing the magic angle effect? Well, you have to completely redesign the system. We know that magic angle spinning works well and can boost signal in NMR. It was suggested that we could try something similar with humans. What could happen if we spun them into different positions and then scanned them? So we could develop a kind of magic angle spinning in vivo. But what would it take to actually build an MR scanner big enough so that a human could spin around inside it? NASA had already developed a gyroscope which successfully spins a person. That was the first suggestion, and knowing how frustrating it can be when a patient moves after you've been scanning them for a period of time. Plus, I am not a fan of fairground rides or even spinning upside down. Plus, I find moving patients really challenging to scan, and I dislike vomit at the best of times. We talked the engineers out of making the patient spin around and settled for just the main magnetic field instead. So magnetic fields normally move from north to south. The big problem with the conventional type systems is that either side is basically got a pole or a yoke. So we needed to create a new magnet to start off with where there was no yoke on either side of it, so the B0 could go through. So here you can see the magnet. Basically, it's got north poles at one end and south poles at the other end, but it's basically the yokes are on either side. Here it is being assembled in the factory, and it's lots and lots of tiny little magnets that are put together. And then this is what it looked like when it was developed in the lab and was being mapped out. it isn't just the magnet that needs to be made. We also had to make a shim set here, a mounting and rotating ring here, and a whole set of gradient coils for the system, which look a little bit like Aboriginal art to me. We also have a range now that we're developing of different receiver coils. So here's what the system looks like now. On the left is the setup for the healthy volunteer scan, and on the right is the setup for the animal knee testing that you can. And here you can see the magnet at 0 degrees, which is this sort of letterbox thing, which is our start point, and 90 degrees of roll. One of the biggest challenges we faced on this new self-designed scanner was actually figuring out which way round it goes. Basically, which way is your up, down, left, right, in and out. This was made super complicated because we basically had multiple planes of reference. There was one for the magnet, one for the patient, and the scan display, and none of them were the same. And that was before you even began moving the magnetic field, as the motors have their own reference plane as well. It was a lot. I had it figured out, and then the engineers decided to swap some of the gradient cables about, and then I had to start all over again. We then had to check it all. So that meant performing an experiment, scanning an object in every possible configuration until we found the ones that worked, so that the images matched the patient position exactly, even when we rotated and yawed and rolled the scanner around. We now use the default at the top for the lower limb, but the upper limb has a different set of values. Another challenge has been artifacts, and we get some amazing ones. This one I like to call DNA because it looks a bit like a Western blot. The cause was an interference at 6.375 megahertz when we were at 6.4 megahertz, and it turns out our shield was letting in a Texan radio station broadcasting within our frequency range. Here's another scary artifact. While scanning tube phantoms for T1 and T2 mapping, which is a really, really long sequence, I got this image after 4 hours of scanning. Sadly, the cause is scanner drift in frequency. I'd used 4 averages, and due to variation in temperature of the scanner over time, when the system combined the 4 averages, we got this blurred image seen in this phantom here. So what actually happens is when I went back to try and work out what happened, using 3 averages, you can see we've actually got 3 separate images that blur across the frequency encode direction from left to right, and you're sort of seeing in triple vision. However, it's not all bad, and here are the results of the very first tissue we scanned in the scanner, which was a bovine knee. It's scanned at different roll positions between 0 and 90 degrees in 10-degree increments, and you can actually see a change in the ligament as the magnetic field rolls around. There's basically an increase in signal intensity from about 40 degrees onwards in parts of it. One of the big learning curves is that we cannot get a 0 degree, only 90 degrees to be naught, and with this new scanner. However, as you can see, there's a large signal intensity variation between the 90 degrees here and the 55 degree scans. As a result, we managed to get fibre estimations for the data for the PCL in this bovine knee. If you want to learn more about this, Harry Lands will be presenting a power pitch at ISMRM in Singapore. Here's an example of collagen fibre tractography, which we've overlaid over the MR image of the bovine knee. We're still playing around with visualization techniques for the radiologists and what they'd like at the moment. Here are the kind of images I'm getting from human volunteers. At the moment, the scan takes somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes to perform, and it needs to be repeated at least 5 times, so volunteers are in the scanner for over an hour. It's not ideal. The results you can see, we've still got quite a lot of noise, and we are struggling with that to then be able to calculate the collagen fibre orientations. But you can see in here that the ACL at 55 degrees does have a higher signal intensity than the one at 30 degrees. We're developing a number of image post-processing scripts which will denoise our images and improve the SNR, and the plan is that that will help us in order to speed up scanning as well. At the same time, we're also developing new coils, multi-channel coils, that will hopefully collect some more signal and less noise. Here are images where the magic angle effect in an ACL is highlighted. In the axial slice, it's possible to see several fibre bundles which excited the radiologists. You're looking out for the yellow flame in the sort of centre of the coloured part, which indicates the greatest magic angle effect. We have been able to repeat the fibre estimation in healthy volunteers, though it's much more difficult at low field due to noise, so you need an awful lot more scanning directions than we were hoping for. The scanning directions are basically focused on the ACL, but when we post-process, we were also able to get some information on the menisci. Despite the challenges associated with noise and post-processing, we have managed to get collagen fibre tractography data on our volunteers. Hopefully, we will be able to show pathology if we are successful in gaining ethical approval to scan patients. The translation of scientific advances into clinical practice can occur very fast or take decades. The magic angle effect was first described in 1962 by Berenstain. Its potential for providing detail inside short T2 tissues like ligaments is finally becoming clear. Hopefully, once the technology catches up, it will revolutionize the way we assess and treat musculoskeletal injuries. Finally, I'd like to mention Professor Ian Young, whose crazy idea the magic angle scanner was, and to thank all these wonderful people and our funders for making this work possible. As this was a virtual presentation, I have put my email address there, so feel free if you have questions to email me and I will do my best to respond to those. Failing that, if you're going to be in Singapore at the ISMRT meeting, you can catch me there. Thank you so much for your attention, and I really hope you enjoy the rest of your day.